Hello and welcome to Mary Makes. I'm Mary and today I'm going to be talking you through my design process on how I created this Pudgy Penguin pattern. I'll share with you my design approach and the process that I went through, as well as show you all of my prototypes and like test versions and what worked and what didn't work. So let's dive in. So when Pudgy Penguins approached me and asked me to design a penguin for them, first thing I did was actually look to see what penguin crochet patterns were already out there on the internet. And unfortunately, in this case, there wasn't anything that was really shaped to Pudgy Penguins specific penguin. It has like a peanut shaped body and like really a cute like white edge for their body. I think a lot of penguin patterns in crocheting actually make the penguin like a sphere, like it's a bubble. It doesn't have a defined neck here, or it does, but because color changing right here is so can be misshapen. What those patterns usually did is they just made the face a different color and then the body was like solid color. So it'd be like, white face, gray head, black body, like kind of like a baby penguin, how a baby penguin looks. So first thing I did was see if the pattern already exists, and in this case what I wanted to crochet didn't quite exist out there, so then I set out to make it. The first thing I did was to design the shape. What overall shape was I going for? And it was that peanut hourglass shape. And so this was the first thing I made when I was designing my pattern. This is a small version. I just used like a 4mm hook and regular old size 4 worsted weight yarn. I made the shape that I liked, and while I was making this I was writing down each row and what the stitches were. So like here's my notebook. I am old-fashioned. I just use a notebook and pencil to write down like row 1, 6 single crochet in the magic ring, and this just helps me keep track of what I did, how many stitches are in each row, because then after I finished this peanut shaped object, I was able to use pins, as you can see here, to mark where I generally wanted the shapes to be. And so once I made my shape, I marked which stitches should be what color. Then I went in and I remade the shape, but adding in the color changes this time. When I made this prototype, so this is the second one I made, this prototype, the color changes weren't as neat. So let me see if I can show you this. The problem with this prototype is that the edges weren't neat. If you can actually see here, I actually went in after I was done crocheting to use a back stitch to sew / embroider on like a nice clean edge. So you can see that those aren't actual crochet stitches defining the body. That's like me sitting there with some yarn sewing in those lines to better define the body. And even then it wasn't perfect, because as you can see on this side here, it's like the white is like jutting in at a hard angle compared to the right side, and that just like bothered me a lot. But at the time I thought that this was a pretty good small prototype, so the next step I took was actually translating it into the big prototype. But again, doing this with a big prototype, like going in afterwards to clean up the color changes by using an extra piece of yarn to just sew on a line going around the body, that wasn't like very fun to crochet at all. And I was like, people are gonna do this pattern, they're gonna make one penguin or like give up at this point. And so when I realized how unfun to make this was, like I personally wouldn't you know, make 10 of this penguin. This one is just too, it takes too much time and it's just not as fun to sew. I'd rather be crocheting. So once I decided that this pattern was not a good one that people would want to make more of, I scrapped it and I tried to solve my problem of the color change a different way. So one of the problems with crocheting in the round is that your stitches will slant as you go in the round. So generally, like with this is the next prototype I made. This is also a small version, and it uses a 4mm hook and size 4 yarn. You can see here that like the white part is like slanting this way slightly, and because of that feature of crocheting in the round, it was at this point I was thinking like maybe instead of yarn over to make your stitches, maybe we should be doing yarn under, yarn over to make the stitches. At the end of the day though, I decided that I didn't want to mess with how I'm used to crocheting because it would just be too frustrating for me, somebody who's a creature of habit. So yeah, the slanty was just not working for me, and I was not going to change my stitches. So the next thing I did, I actually decided that crocheting on a small scale with size 4 yarn was not really being, what's the word? Indicative of how the color changes would look when going to big fluffy yarn. So I did my next couple of tests using my jumbo chenille yarn. Both of these tests were tests where I was changing the shape of the white part. So this one I think I was testing the decrease around the chin and neck area, and I liked it, but I still just wasn't liking how this side here was jutting in so deeply because of where that decrease was placed. So I attempted it again, but this time changing the white part so that it was bigger. So you can see on my pink prototype, the widow's peak, the forehead white shape part, starts with 2 stitches and then goes to 4 white stitches. In this blue one, we go from 3 to 5. And I think once I made that change, I decided I liked this a lot better, but I felt that I didn't have enough stitches to work with. And so that led me to decide to try to change the base I was working in. And what I mean by the base, I mean the multiple that I'm using. So in all of these prototypes I'm holding here, all of these are done with a base of 6. That means my rows are increasing by multiples of 6. So like row 1 has 6 stitches, row 2 has 12, 3, 18, 24, 30, 36, and so on. It's all being worked in multiples of 6. But my next prototype, which actually became my final, was when I was working in a base of 8. Working in a base of 8 made it so I got more stitches faster. So I went 8, 16, 24, 32, and that was really great because I could just get that many stitches, and by then I have 32 stitches in this round here where we start introducing the white, to then be able to have more control over the shaping. Once I changed this to a base of 8, I just felt like the numbers worked out really nicely, like as I was jotting down the pattern in my notebook. And additionally, because I was designing row by row, I kind of think of it like 3D printing, like you're making it just like upside down, designing how each row looks. So like, I guess I don't have a prototype to show this part because this is what became the final, but I was just making a row, undoing it if I didn't like it, remaking it, and that's what I did to make this final penguin. And it actually turned out really great, because one of the things that I worked out was keeping the increases and decreases on the edges of the white part. So whenever you make like an increase, I just felt like that like made the stitches sit in a V next to each other, because you're cramming two stitches into the same hole, so they have to like push against each other. And because it was pushing, like competing for space almost, by the time it got to the next row, those stitches were comfortably placed. And so that's why the color changes on this pattern just end up so clean, because after each row of increases or decreases, your stitches just have room to breathe. Of course, color changing going one way is a lot neater than this way. Like you can still see little, like a teeny bit of the blue stitch poking through, but this I can live with. There are some color changes that like I can't live with. Like for example, for this Widow's Peak, you can see up here like this blue poking through here. That wasn't something controllable, so that is one thing I had to compromise on, which was adding a part to the pattern to say, hey, at the end of crocheting, go back in with a little bit of white yarn to cover up the blue or the body color poking through. And honestly, just tidying up this part here and this part here, that was like, oh, that was so much easier compared to like this guy where I had like almost like maybe a yard or 4 feet of yarn to go through and embroider the edge onto this guy. So it was a lot of trial and error, but I think it worked out very well. And of course, I wouldn't have gone from this pattern to this pattern had I not gotten feedback from my peeps on like what was missing. So always seek feedback. Personally, I'm not somebody who solicits pattern testers from the internet. I just like ask my family what they think of it, and they let me know. So yeah. I hope that was helpful in learning about a little more about how I designed this, what my approach was, and what kind of challenges I faced. Honestly, I think for me, I just trial and error it, and you know, you can always change it, you can always undo it. I think one of the things that makes me really comfortable with just trying it out is knowing that like the amount of yarn and stuffing and like material I used for this was like negligible in terms of like cost. You know, a ball of yarn like tops $5 or $6, and like this much stuffing is gonna be cents. So I think knowing that my material cost wasn't gonna like put me out of business made me feel more okay with trying and testing things out. I think if I was dealing with like really expensive material, like a $50 ball of yarn of hand spun wool or something like that, I would be a lot a lot more worried about just testing and just trying something out. So yeah, I hope you found this interesting, and I hope this encourages you to try to design your own patterns. And let me know in the comments if you have any questions, or just let me know what you thought about this kind of a video. Thank you so much for watching, and bye. Oh, bye. So I scrapped that idea, and what I decided to do next was to increase the base of the crochet. What I mean by increasing the base is by increasing like the multiple of stitches you're working in. So all of these prototypes that I've made up to this point, this is all in a base of 6. So when you're increasing these rows, the number of stitches in each row is increasing by multiples of 6. It's like 6, 12, 18, 24, 30, 36, and onwards. I decided to increase to a base of 8 in my next couple of prototypes. And it's once I increased to a base of 8 that I realized I had more stitches per row to work with, and that helped me shape the color a lot better. So here's the next prototype. Actually, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, this is when I was trying to develop it still. This is in a base of 6. This is in a base of 8. This is when I was testing out the different shapes of the peak. And you can see in this one, the white part of the face is still very skinny compared to this one. The white part on this blue sample is a lot wider compared to how like wide it is on this pink sample. And it's at this point that I decided that having more stitches, actually, wait a minute.